There's a shift that occurs in women around the age of 40 that is seldom discussed openly. One moment, she's the heart of the home, making meals for the children, handling domestic duties, organizing family getaways. The next, she's creating dating profiles, purchasing intimate apparel, and secretly messaging a man she met at the gym. You're left standing in the wreckage, wondering what happened to the wife you thought you knew. This isn't an isolated event, it's a widespread phenomenon. Countless men are witnessing their reliable, steadfast wives seemingly regress into adolescence in middle-aged bodies. And the most frustrating part is the collective feigned surprise, as if the warning signs weren't embedded in her biological makeup for years. You believe you understand your wife. You assume that because she's shared a life with you for 15 years, borne your children, and built a home together, she is somehow impervious to the change that is coming. Friend, you are living in a delusion. There is a psychological detonator embedded in every woman, and it is set to go off somewhere between the ages of 35 and 45. It's not a matter of if, but when. The only variable is the extent of the collateral damage when it finally erupts. Men frequently fail to grasp that a woman at 40 is not the same person they pledged their life to. This isn't about gaining maturity or wisdom. It's about a fundamental restructuring of her brain's chemistry, her core priorities, and her very sense of identity. The woman who was once content in her role as a mother and wife at 30 develops an insatiable hunger for external validation at 40. And that craving drives her to actions that can demolish everything you've painstakingly built together. You have to understand that for many women, their self-worth rests on a fragile foundation, their physical appearance. From her earliest years, society programs her with a simple equation. Her value is her beauty. Be attractive, be wanted, be desired. For 2 decades, roughly from 15 to 35, this programming functions flawlessly. Men pursue her, compliments are abundant, and she feels inherently valuable. Then, biology intervenes, as it always does, and begins to reclaim what it gave. At 40, she gazes into the mirror and sees an unfamiliar face. Not because she is unattractive, but because she is different. The allure that once commanded attention now struggles to elicit a passing glance. The figure that once captivated men now receives, at best, a polite nod. This isn't merely about vanity, it's an identity collapse. Her entire conception of self was constructed on the bedrock of being desired. Now that desire is dissipating like mist in the morning sun. To grasp the magnitude of this, consider the mindset of a star athlete. His entire identity, his self-worth, is inextricably linked to his physical prowess. Then the inevitable decline of age begins. He's no longer at his peak. He can't perform the feats he once did with ease. Now amplify that psychological crisis tenfold, and you begin to approach the internal turmoil a woman experiences when she confronts the fading of her own beauty. But this is where the situation becomes perilous. Rather than accepting this natural progression, rather than moving with grace into a new chapter of life, the modern woman often panics. She wages a war against the reality of time, and the first casualty of that war is your marriage. A compliment to a 22-year-old is like background static. She might dismiss it with a casual, "I know." But when a 42-year-old receives that same praise, her brain is flooded with dopamine. It's the proof she's been desperately seeking, that she still has it, that she isn't becoming invisible. A single kind word from a stranger can suddenly outweigh a decade of your unwavering devotion. Why? Because your devotion is perceived as an obligation. His attention is a choice. This is the unspoken truth. Married women over 40 can become the most susceptible targets for seduction. not because they are inherently flawed, but because they are starving for something you can no longer provide. The intoxicating thrill of being chosen by someone with no obligation to do so. Your attention is discounted because you are a permanent fixture. You are married, you share children, it is expected that you find her attractive. But the random man at the coffee shop who offers a smile, that is pure, unadulterated validation. That is evidence that she is still a player in the game. And once she gets that initial taste of validation from an outside source, the end is often in sight. Not instantly, but inevitably. Because now she is reminded of what she has been missing. She recalls the feeling of being pursued, of being desired, of being someone's fantasy rather than just their everyday reality. That memory becomes a persistent craving that your stable, predictable affection can no longer satisfy. If you want to pinpoint the exact moment your marriage enters a critical phase, it's when she begins to speak of her past with a fond smile rather than a sense of closure. When her ex-boyfriends are mentioned with a hint of nostalgia instead of disdain. When she recounts tales of her single life with a spark in her eyes, not relief that those days are behind her. That is the moment the countdown has truly begun. Here is the stark biological reality they skip in health class. A woman's brain undergoes a significant rewiring process as she ages. The chemical reward system that made her feel vibrant and alive at 25 is running on empty by 45. What once gave her a rush of pleasure hormones now barely registers. At 20, simply holding hands could make her heart pound. At 40, she requires an emotional cataclysm just to feel a tremor. Her neurological pathways have been so altered that your thoughtfully planned romantic dinner feels like a chore. The weekend getaway you arranged, her brain files it under routine maintenance. The intimate moments you've shared for years register as little more than background noise. She needs increasingly intense stimuli to feel anything, and you, my friend, are the embodiment of predictability. You are comfort. You are safety. You are neurologically invisible. This is the reason why a woman's most profound betrayals often occur after 35. It isn't born from malice, but from a desperate need to feel alive again, to matter, to be more than just someone's aging partner. The same woman who was content with holding hands at 20 might need a full-blown emotional affair at 40 just to feel a flicker of excitement. The woman who was faithful for 15 years suddenly becomes capable of a cruelty you never thought possible. I've witnessed this scenario countless times. The dedicated mother of 3 who abandons her family for a personal trainer. The devout wife who begins an affair with her husband's closest friend. The seemingly perfect woman who detonates her entire life for a man she met online. And in every instance, the husband utters the same words, "I never saw it coming." Is that really true? Did you never notice the way she looked at her reflection with discontent? Did you miss the way her face lit up when a stranger paid her attention? Did you not sense the emotional distance growing even as she went through the physical motions? The signs are invariably present, but men are often blind to them. It begins with nostalgia. She starts to romanticize her past, speaking of her wild days with a glimmer in her eye that wasn't there before. Old photo albums reappear. Stories about former boyfriends change from cautionary tales to wistful recollections. She is no longer living in the present. She is mourning a past self. Next, observe her new circle of friends, particularly the divorced ones who have found themselves. These women aren't companions, they are enablers, peddling a narrative that she deserves more. Their get-togethers transform into sessions of shared discontent where they reinforce how they were held back and how much more fulfilled they are now. Through their poisonous perspective, your stable marriage is reframed as a form of confinement.
Social media then becomes her escape and her echo chamber. She spends hours scrolling, comparing the messy reality of her life with the perfectly curated highlight reels of others. The algorithm is a cruel master. It learns her insecurities and feeds her a constant stream of content about brave women starting over and finding love after 40. Every post reinforces the delusion that a better life is just one destructive decision away. The physical transformations arrive in stages. At first, it's subtle. New skincare regimens, hair appointments, cosmetic procedures she once swore she'd never consider. Then it escalates. Extreme diets, obsessive workout routines, and clothing more suited for her teenage daughter. She isn't trying to look good. She's trying to look young. There's a palpable desperation in every purchase, every workout, every selfie she perfects. Finally, the emotional disengagement becomes undeniable. She requires space, me time, and has mysterious new commitments. She is either constantly initiating arguments or is unnervingly placid. Both are ominous signs. The former indicates she's building a legal and moral case against you. The latter suggests she's managing the guilt of what she is already doing or planning to do. What truly infuriates me is how our culture champions this demolition. Magazines, television shows, and even therapists tell her that she deserves happiness, that she must find herself, and that she should never settle. They validate her panic, endorse her rebellion, and celebrate the destruction of her family. They preach that her feelings are paramount, trumping her commitments. Her happiness is more important than her children's stability. Her personal desires outweigh the devastation she inflicts. No one tells her the difficult truth that beauty is fleeting for everyone, that external attention is an addiction that must be overcome, that building something of lasting value is more meaningful than chasing a temporary feeling. No one explains that the excitement she craves is merely a chemical reaction, not a sign of true meaning. The butterflies she misses are just anxiety, not authentic love. The passion she yearns for is simply the allure of novelty, not genuine depth. Instead, she is inundated with vapid empowerment slogans. You go, girl. Live your truth. Follow your heart. This is treated as if a 40-year-old woman driven by her hormonal panic is any different from a 16-year-old boy driven by his. Both are captives of their biology. Both are prone to terrible decisions. Both will sacrifice everything for a momentary high. And you? You are expected to be understanding, supportive, to give her space, to work on yourself. As if any amount of self-improvement could ever compete with the intoxicating rush of being desired by someone new. You could transform into the ideal husband overnight, and it would make no difference, because ideal is predictable, and predictability doesn't trigger a dopamine release. Another truth rarely acknowledged is the role her friends play in this demolition. Those recently divorced women she's spending time with, the empowered women living their best lives, they are not her allies. They are accomplices in her self-destruction. They whisper poison disguised as wisdom. You deserve better. Life's too short. You only live once. They are nudging her towards the precipice because misery loves company. They require validation for their own life choices, and nothing validates a poor decision more than seeing someone else repeat it. Observe what happens when your wife begins to align herself with divorced women. Suddenly, every normal marital disagreement is labeled abuse. Every routine is oppression. Every shared responsibility is a sacrifice. These women reframe her entire existence through the lens of victimhood. Your stable, ordinary marriage becomes a prison from which she must escape. And the reality she doesn't see is the aftermath. The social media posts don't show the woman 6 months later when the new boyfriend has revealed himself to be just another flawed human being. They don't show her spending holidays alone because the children have chosen to be with their father. They don't show the crushing realization that starting over at 45 isn't liberating, it's exhausting. They don't show the moment she understands she traded a deep, meaningful connection for shallow attention, a true partnership for a temporary thrill.
I recall a man whose wife left him after 18 years.
She told everyone he was emotionally abusive and neglectful, that she had been miserable for years. This was a complete shock to him. He had photographs, videos, even love letters she had written just months before her departure, all depicting a happy family and a loving relationship. But in her new narrative, it was all a performance. The truth is far simpler. She needed him to be the antagonist so she could be the protagonist of her own story. The children, of course, become collateral damage in her war against aging. She convinces herself they will be fine, that they'll adjust, that they just want her to be happy. But children don't prioritize their parents' happiness. They prioritize stability, predictability, and the presence of both parents. Her midlife panic becomes more important than their emotional security. They will spend years in therapy trying to comprehend why their mother's need to feel young again superseded their need for an intact family. It's fascinating how consistent the timing is. It often happens right when the children are old enough to be more self-sufficient, when she finally has a moment to breathe, when life should theoretically be getting easier. That is precisely when the explosion occurs. Because now she has time to think, time to compare, time to scroll through social media and see all the things she believes she's missing. Time to reminisce about who she was before she was a wife and mother. And the person she remembers was young, desired, and full of potential. The person she sees now is a mom, a wife, ordinary. The chasm between her memory and her reality becomes an unbearable void. She isn't comparing her life to other real lives. She's comparing it to a fantasy. The fantasy of eternal youth, unending excitement, and perpetual desire. The most dangerous moment is when her focus shifts from general attention to the attention of one specific man. It could be a coworker who compliments her, an old flame who reconnects on social media, or a trainer who tells her she looks incredible. The who is irrelevant. What matters is that she now has a face to attach to her fantasies. The abstract idea of other options solidifies into, he could be my option. Once that seed is planted, it often grows with the tenacity of a weed. She'll insist it's innocent, just friends, just business, but you will notice the subtle shifts. His name is mentioned too frequently, or just as telling, never at all. She becomes fiercely protective of her phone. She offers elaborate explanations for things you haven't even questioned. She is either constantly picking fights or is unusually agreeable. Both are warning signs. One is building justification, the other is managing guilt. The hard truth is that once a woman starts down this path, the relationship is often beyond saving. She might return after her new adventure implodes, after the new man proves to be flawed, after the novelty wears off. She might come back with tears and apologies, but it's already over. The person who returns is not your wife. She is a stranger inhabiting your wife's body, carrying the memories of another man, and forever comparing you to the fantasy she chased. Believe me, I have seen women who had it all. Wealthy husbands, beautiful homes, healthy children, and they threw it all away for a bartender who paid them a little attention. I've known women who dismantled 20-year marriages for a 3-month fling with a man from their gym. It wasn't because their husbands were bad men, but because their husbands were familiar, and familiarity no longer provides the high a 40-year-old woman is desperately seeking. Many of these women are fully aware of what they are doing. They know they are wrecking their families and traumatizing their children. They know they are trading something real for something ephemeral, but they proceed anyway. Because the fear of growing old without one last taste of excitement is more powerful than their love for their family. They will rationalize their actions, of course, but these are the narratives they construct to avoid the devastating truth. They chose their ego over their family. They chose validation over loyalty. They chose themselves over everyone who depended on them. When you understand the female psyche at this age, you begin to see that it's not personal. Your wife isn't leaving because you were a failure. She is leaving because she is failing to accept reality. She isn't running towards something better. She is running away from something she cannot escape: aging, irrelevance, and her own mortality. You just happen to be the living symbol of all the things she is desperate to flee. Consider the cruelty of it. You were there for her youth and beauty. You chose her when she had countless options. You committed to her. You built a life and raised children together. And what is your reward for this steadfast loyalty? To be cast aside at the very moment she is most vulnerable, when she should be most grateful for a partner who sees beyond the wrinkles to the person within. But gratitude requires wisdom, and wisdom cannot coexist with panic. And our culture cheers her on. So brave, living her truth, finding herself. No one ever mentions the shattered husband trying to explain to his children why their mother now lives with another man. No one counts the true cost of a woman's midlife crisis. The modern woman was not prepared for this. She was raised on a narrative of being a princess, told she would always be special, always be desired. No one prepared her for the biological wall every woman eventually hits. No one taught her that beauty is a depreciating asset, and that male attention is a drug that must be weaned off of. Instead, she was fed a diet of, "You deserve better," and "follow your feelings." So when her feelings change, when happiness seems to reside elsewhere, she acts on it, with no regard for the consequences, the family, or the vows she made.
I always tell the men who come to me shattered by this experience, it was never about you. You could have been the perfect husband, and she still might have left. Her decision had nothing to do with your quality as a partner, and everything to do with her inability to reconcile with the reality of time. You were simply collateral damage in her war against herself. The 25-year-old woman who promised to love you forever truly meant it, but the 40-year-old woman inhabiting her body is a different person, with different brain chemistry, different priorities, and different fears. The woman you married no longer exists. She has been replaced by someone who looks like her, but operates on an entirely different psychological frequency. And she will never admit this. She will never say, "I destroyed our family because I am terrified of getting old." She will create a narrative where she is the hero, breaking free from oppression and finding her true self. The worst part is that there is almost nothing you can do to prevent it if she is the type of woman whose entire identity is constructed upon being desired. If her self-worth is sourced from male attention and her happiness is contingent on external validation, then this implosion is almost a foregone conclusion. You were not married to a woman, you were married to a ticking clock. And around the age of 40, that clock strikes midnight. You cannot love her through it or reason her out of it. You are not dealing with a relationship problem. You are facing an existential crisis. And in that crisis, you represent everything she is trying to escape. So, what can a man do? First, recognize the warning signs early. If your partner's identity is entirely wrapped up in her appearance and she lives for external validation, you are in a precarious position. Second, understand that if she leaves, it is not a reflection of your failure. You cannot fix another person's battle with time. Third, protect yourself and your children. Document everything, secure your finances, and prepare for a difficult road. Because when a woman over 40 decides to detonate her life, she often tries to take everyone else down with her. The brutal truth is that modern culture has programmed many women for novelty and attention, not for enduring long-term partnership. They were taught to chase feelings, not build foundations. When the initial excitement of marriage inevitably fades, they panic and flee. This isn't every woman, of course. There are those who understand that character endures long after beauty fades, that building something permanent is more valuable than any temporary excitement. But these women are becoming rarer.
So, if you are married to a woman approaching 40, watch closely. Look not for the classic signs of infidelity, but for the signs of panic, the obsession with youth, the romanticizing of the past, the sudden desperate need for validation, and a growing resentment toward her responsibilities. These are the tremors before the earthquake. And when it hits, it can take your life, your children's stability, and years of shared history with it. Women over 40 don't just leave. They often destroy. Not out of malice, but out of terror. A terror of aging, of invisibility, of being ordinary. And in that state of terror, they will sacrifice anything and anyone to feel special. Just one more time. Don't say you weren't warned.